and thanks for tuning in to the Path 11 podcast. I am your host, April Hanna. At the Path 11 podcast, we are here trying to deliver leading-edge research on consciousness, healing, and metaphysics. And just like you, we are trying to answer the big questions about life. Who are we? Why are we here? And what is our purpose? We hope by listening to our podcast, it will make each day you live on Earth a little easier to understand. And now for today's podcast. So our guest on today's show is Dr. Joanne Connolly, and she is a veterinarian promoting intuitive medicine. She guides families in tuning in with their pets, themselves, nature, and the universe to make better medical decisions. She is a vegan and inspires all animals and humans to live in balance as one with the web of life. Dr. Joanne published her first book titled Animal Teachings from Hayley's Angels Methods and is currently writing her second book, and we would like to welcome her on the show. So Dr. Joanne, thank you so much for joining me today.
My pleasure, April. It's such a joy to be here with you and your audience.
Yes, and was really interested in one of the reasons why we reached out to you is because I know that you specialize in end-of-life care and counseling, for animals, and I just really like the fact that I'm seeing more attention brought to this in end-of-life care for animals, and also how to support the people who are going through this transition with their animals. And I know that you have, after reading your book, a lot of intuitive work that you do as well. So I was just really excited to be able to find you. So maybe you can give our listeners a little bit more of your background and really what drew you into this field and how you are just working with animals and helping people with the end-of-life care.
Absolutely. Animals have always been the best teachers I found. Since I was a little girl, I was always drawn to them and felt much more comfortable around them than around people. Animals are easy, they're silly. They remind us to stay in our heart and slow down the pace and enjoy life and look at the good in life. So I've always felt like they were the best teachers to making me a better person. And I was blessed with having Hayley in my life. She was a rescued Rottweiler mix, and we spent many years together. And she got to be 14 years old and felt like she was 100. She had a good life, but the end of her life came, and I had to help her pass peacefully. And the blessing was that I was able to help her pass at home, because obviously it was easy for me being a veterinarian. I could help her, just bring the medications to her, so I didn't have to move her or carry her to the hospital. And after she passed, my life really changed forever. And I really felt for the first time that she was there in the spirit world orchestrating my next life chapter, because people started calling me, or a friend of a friend needed help with the euthanasia of their pet. And that was amazing, the shift in my life that was happening without me trying to go on that path. I had a lot of fears, and I didn't know how to go about starting a business and being alone at people's homes. It's very scary. So, but I really felt Hayley's presence, and animals need help. So I jumped in and did the best I could. And that was 12 years ago. And since then, I've helped over 10,000 families help their pet and find peace and comfort. And I've learned so much from this amazing experience and what families have shared with me, and really deepening the bond between animals and people. Teachings that obviously I did not learn in veterinary school, where, of course, we're taught to use our brain and diagnose diseases, and it's how all about how the body works, and it's really valuable teachings. But then being able to marry those teachings from school with really what the animals are reminding me of. Hey, stay in your heart and listen to us. It's not easy to be a patient. It hurts, and we need to really tailor our approach. So that's what I call intuitive medicine, just really making fair and personalized medical decision based on what the patient needs, and being more aware and in tune with each animal, because they all have different needs. So when we diagnose cancer in 100 different animals or people, for that matter, it's all the same. The disease, the diagnosis might be the same, but how we're going to go about it varies from one being to the next, So that's what I talk a lot about in my book. And it's just been fascinating because we can definitely make better medical decisions.
Yeah, and I think sometimes, having to make those medical decisions for our pets can just carry a lot of stress. Sometimes illness can come on quickly, and maybe, the average person isn't really thinking about holistic medicine, for their pet, or even know what the options are. So do you have any information that you can share about maybe better ways that pet owners can begin to educate themselves about the different types of medicine out there for animals? Because I feel like just as humans, there's some Western medicine techniques and Eastern medicine techniques, and there's people performing Reiki, acupuncture on animals and stuff like that. So what do you feel is the best holistic approach when it comes to treating animals with medicine?
And I will say it's a team effort. Luckily, the more tools we have, the better. And like you said, we now do have chiropractic for animals and acupuncture, herbal options, supplements. And of course, the Western medicine is still extremely valid. When somebody has an emergency, a crisis, gets hit by a car, we need to be able to fix that. But my fascination, or what I want people to remember, is why do we get sick in the first place, and how should we not get sick? How can we prevent illnesses and accidents, for that matter? And I've found a lot of answers, which I share in my book. But in a nutshell, when we get out of balance in any aspects of our life, that's when I feel like the body gets sick, or that's when we get in trouble with an accident, when we were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Because let's say, for example, somebody's asking you to go on a trip, but you have this gut feeling inside that you just don't want to go, or you're just going to go to please somebody else. But deep down, that's not the decision that honors your own truth. And then you go on that trip and you get hurt. Well, so listening to your true nature, and we all have to help one another and really respect one another's decisions, because we're all different and we all have different needs, different passions. Our animals also have like a reason to live, what makes you feel alive. And I tell people, like, even if you have 10 cats, they all are unique. And they all will thrive with different things. One of our cats loves music. The other one needs to go outside. And if we don't let him go outside, he gets constipated. I mean, it's as plain as, it's so obvious that his body shuts down, like his mind too, like he gets so unhappy. So when we look deeper into what does my animal need, and obviously good food, good nutrition, just like people, our animals eat too much preservatives and dyes and processed food. So trying to bring it back to simple as nature intended. So then we can catch problems when they start arising, and not, and we have power. We have a lot of power over a diagnosis, okay, why is this happening and what can we do about it? So a lot of communication between any doctors and the patient, but also reaching out to, now there is a lot of intuitive workers who will help tune in and just really figure things out. Like we're having this conversation today, what can we do to regain balance? What can our animals do to regain balance? One of the most fascinating things that I've noticed really early on in my career, which was 18 years ago, was that a lot of times animals develop the same physical illness as their people. And how is that possible? Well, we share the same stress, the same stressful situations. Whatever you're processing inside, your animal is like a little sponge. He's right there going through life with you, and he will feel those energies or those emotions that you're feeling. So that gives us one more layer to work on, so we can all stay zen and helping our animals live the life that they were meant to live, and really increase everyone's quality of life by focusing on balance and fulfilling everyone's needs and feeding our souls ultimately, So it's really amazing how much power we have.
Yes, and you touched a lot on that in your book too, about how sensitive our animals are and the environments that we provide for them. And I think it was one of the chapters when you were talking about animal communication and how animals can become, very upset if there's arguing in the house, or, if the house isn't very peaceful, and how that can affect them. It was a good reminder that just because they tend to maybe be calm or they're in the background, that the environment that we're creating for them to live in is really important. And they very much are affected by the household as we are.
Yes, they give us unconditional love, and patience. They wait for us to become the better version of ourselves that they know we can become. That's kind of how I sense they are little guardian angels, they will stick with us through thick and thin and just support us. So I'm really grateful that more and more people are adopting animals and welcoming animals into their lives. And often, when it's not necessarily planned, you're taking a walk on the street and then this cat just comes out of nowhere and follows you home and say, okay, I'm here, let's go. Let's share this journey together. And so I'm always fascinated when I ask them, I ask families, well, how did you adopt your pet? How did you choose this one? And most people will say, oh, he chose me. He gave me that look. And again, I was looking for a different breed, different age, but this animal, we just locked eyes and that was it. Love at first sight. I felt it in my heart. So amazingly, a lot of people have shared similar experiences as I have and as I talk about in the book, but we live in a very judgmental society, so a lot of people don't want to share those things, or they're afraid, of course, of being judged. But when I open that door with them and say, hey, how did you feel like, how did you make that decision to euthanize your pet? How do you know it's time? And people will tell me how, again, they just sensed it in their heart, or they had a dream in which they received guidance. Or people will tell me, well, my mom has passed, and every time I have a tough decision to make, I see cardinal birds because my mom loved cardinal birds. Or someone else is, lost a loved one who loved playing golf, and then he starts finding random golf balls and here and there in life when the tough decision comes around, or, like little sign of guidance, might you say, from the other side. Any of those little, I don't believe in coincidences. There is a lot in this world that can't be explained. There's more than what meets the eye. So all these synchronicities, I feel like we definitely are all one, with nature and Mother Earth, but also we give each other messages. You're talking to your friend and something random just comes out of your friend's mouth and it's an answer to something you had been wondering about. We share we give each other answers on difficulties that we have. And so we're all connected on that level. So it's really just tuning in with our heart and our intuition that we were all born with. And when you look at children, they're so connected. I love when I go to people's homes and there is a euthanasia and children are present, because they handle it better than their parents. They're so connected and pure. They remember, it seems, where they came from, where the animal is when we die, going back home to the spirit world. Children are very in tune, and I love hearing their wisdom. They have a lot to share.
They do. One of the chapters that I really loved in your book was chapter 6, and that's entitled "Tapping into the Power of Our Past Lives and Animal Communication." And you gave some stories in there too about how many times we are connected with the pets that we have in this lifetime that we may have reincarnated with them in the past, but also how sometimes animals may have been in human form in a past life. And you also gave examples about those animals. And I've met many people that would say, oh my God, my dog is just like a human and has a lot of those human personality traits, or really big personalities, that it just is like amazing that it's a dog or it's a cat, but it just feels so human-like. So I was hoping we can talk a little bit more about past lives and animals.
Yes, I mean, it's a huge part of my life. I'm writing a second book because I have more to share. But one of the stories that will be in the next book is how I healed my own horse allergies with past lives. And so basically, my mom is very intuitive too, and so I've done some past life regression, like I talk about in the first book. But then I was just having lunch with my mom, and we were randomly just talking with our hearts about my horse allergies and where do they come from. And when you're in your heart, and you're not, your brain can only figure out so much. So you have to tap into just your trying to unlock the unconscious mind. There's so much information stored from, again, our past lives. And so I saw this movie just playing in my head of my life. I was a Native American, and the white men were capturing our wild horses. And I just burst into tears, and I was reliving it. And even now, telling you the story, I get all emotional because I lived it. I went through that emotional shock. And so no wonder that every time I would go to a barn to see a horse, I would burst into tears. My body would go into shock. And not that I felt the sadness, but my eyes would start running, my nose would clog up. I was having that same reaction. So just realizing that it healed my allergies pretty much overnight. I was a different person just knowing where it came from. And my childhood dream has always been to have a horse. I've always wanted a horse. And finally, a couple years ago, my horse showed up, and it was just a very interesting coincidence. We lived in Arizona for many years, and the life chapter ended, and my husband and I really needed to reconnect with grass and water. And so we moved to Florida. And as soon as we moved to Florida, and it was tough, we were really out of balance, but we needed to close a big chapter. It was not easy. So finally we make it to Florida, and my new neighbor, I start talking with her, and she says, "So are you ready for your horse? Because I know who he is." And I'm like, "What?" I didn't tell her anything. We had barely just met. So this horse I rescued him too. He needed a second chance at life, and he moved in. And he was a retired show horse, and he needed to also go back to just being a horse, And so I helped him heal because I just spoiled him. We had a beautiful pond, and he could just play and swim in the pond all day long and just graze, and no human forcing him to do anything. And he healed me because I never had allergies to him. My heart just healed for a couple years, being with him and just enjoying that moment and healing that trauma that happened before. And the way he died, he was an old guy, so he started having arthritis, but he was well managed on pain medication. And then I had a dream one night where him and I were flying in heaven. He had turned into an angel. He had beautiful wings, and I was just hanging onto his neck, and he was so happy and light and healthy again and young, and we were home, in heaven. So when I woke up the next day and I went to see him at the barn, he was not moving. He was in so much pain. And the dream helped me find peace with, okay, he's ready. He's telling me that there's no need to try any more medications, and he's ready to go back home, and I have to help him. I have to honor his wishes. So it was very difficult, but I knew that I had to do this to him. I mean, it was a gift for him, to not be in pain. So past lives are huge, and they help us understand a lot of what's happening today. And our animals definitely have past lives, and I meet a lot of people. One of my fascination right now, it's becoming easier and easier. And when I meet people, I can detect what animal they've been before by their behaviors. And then I talk to them. A coworker of mine, she's amazing. And I really felt like we were talking about this, and I was like, I think you've been a crab before. And she loves to just walk on the beaches. She just walks and walks along the beaches, and her hair kind of is puffed up like crab legs. And she loves the water. She's not from Florida, but she moved here because she needed this for survival. When you've been a crab and you're incarnating that animal, I mean, you need to be near the water. If you live in the desert, you're going to get sick. It's not a good place for you to be. So finally, we're having that conversation, and then she lifts her sleeve and she shows me she has a crab tattoo on her shoulder that she's had for years.
Oh my gosh.
And he's like, yep, okay, I think you're right, So it's so empowering because, again, it explains a lot of our behaviors. And I have I talk about in the book, I have this unexplained fear of giving birth in this life. I never want children. I like them, but I could never give birth. And my mom can't explain that fear. And I really feel like it comes from another lifetime where I probably died giving birth. And so nobody can tell me in this life that giving birth is easy or, oh, everybody does it. Like, no, I'm terrified. So whenever you have some strong fears that you don't understand, well, it's worth digging into where does that come from? And so it unlocks a lot of answers and then helps you move on.
Yeah. And if people were, interested in trying to learn more about maybe their past life incarnation with their current animal, is your recommendation to have people find someone that does animal communication?
I will. My best recommendation is really follow your gut feeling. There is a lot of different people out there. There is animal communicators, there's psychics, there's past life regression therapists, there's hypnotherapist. I'll do some consultations too. And really, it has to feel right to you because we're all different channels of communication. The one warning that I give in the book, don't do it for curiosity. If you're just trying to, the purpose must be divine. It needs to feel right because otherwise you'll hit a wall. Like it won't be a positive experience. But when it's a loving journey that we're on and really trying to unlock some important information. And a lot of people, like the goal too in my book, like I talk about my own routine of communication and I try, and I'll give even more tools in the next book, but we all have that power. So even just tuning in, like trying to slow down your brain and really shut off your brain. And to me, nature is really a good place to feel connected, sitting on the earth and feeling the earth under your feet or under your legs, just really sitting in the grass and feeling the sky and becoming just one with the elements. And right away, you'll start feeling things. You'll start unlocking memories. So being involved to me is really important because nobody else can live your life, so you have to tap into your own power as much as you can. And yes, there is a lot of people out there that can help you on your journey. Absolutely.
Yeah. Another thing that I really love that made me stop and think a little bit more about my own pets, you have in one of the chapters, is knowing your pet's life mission can help you to grow. And, I stopped for a second. I was like, wow, what are my pet's life missions, and because there's a part of me at first that, when I think about the animal kingdom and I think about animals, the first thing that comes to mind is I think their mission on earth is really to teach us that unconditional love because they really don't ask anything of us. And anyone that I've ever talked to that has ever owned an animal, sometimes they'll joke and say, well, I love my animal more than people. There's just really a very unique and different bond when your heart bonds with an animal as opposed to maybe other human beings because there can be more conditions put on relationships and love. So I kind of feel like, and I don't know if you would agree with this, as a catch-all, the animal kingdom has a specific mission here on Earth. But how does one begin to maybe sit with their animal and really understand what the specific life mission is for that pet and how those life missions can be different for each animal?
So starting with how we meet our pet, like we're talking about, I tell people be really open-minded because that's where the blessings are in the right animal finding you and you not forcing something with an animal that might not be right for you. So letting the animal find you. And so I've seen amazing teams between animals and people. And one of the examples that I give in the book is still today just one of the most amazing team effort that I've seen is this older man who has trouble walking himself. And he takes care of this kitty who was hit by a car and who has trouble walking too. And together they make each other feel normal. and they support each other through that difficult or abnormal or just different journey. So a lot of animals will push us out of our comfort zone. So my recommendation is embrace the challenges, because those will make you grow. And so following your animal on its own journey. Pay attention to where your animal wants to go, as opposed to you being too rigid, as, like, let's say you're walking your dog and your dog just wants to say hi to everybody on the street, but you're on a time schedule and you're walking your dog and this is going to last 15 minutes. And if your dog is trying to say hello, you just yank on the leash and we're going, So so I feel like, well, maybe you're missing out here, because you might have a little therapy pet on your hands, and this pet might really thrive if you take him to nursing homes, hospitals, schools. I have a few patients who go to schools and children read to them, because children they don't feel judged when they're around animals. It's so much easier. So they learn to read much better when they read to animals, as opposed to teachers and people who might laugh at them because of the way they pronounce or anything, So there is a pig living with me right now, and that was definitely not planned. And this pig showed up at my house, and he's on a mission right now. He's a little vegan activist. And I did not realize, again, what was happening, but I'm embracing this because now it makes so much sense. I'm vegan myself, and this pig is a lot of fun, but we were really overwhelmed at first because we did not know anything about pigs, my husband and I. And so anyway, we got through the sleep deprivation phase, and we secured our fences, and I had to neuter him, and we went through a lot. But Wilbur is now walking on the leash, and he loves to go for rides, so we take him to the beach. And of course, people will just, gather around him, and he sits for treats. Like, he's so smart. And so now the first thing that comes out of people's mouth is, oh my God, I will never eat bacon again. I will never eat ham. And I realized, oh, wow, I did not see this coming, but people wouldn't listen to me. If I tell them, oh, be kind to the animals, know what animal you eat. No, leave it to Wilbur, the cutest pig, to teach them that, hey, pigs have emotions, animals matter, and be careful what you participate into. And if you're going to eat animals, know where they come from. Hopefully, you want them to have a happy life, a happy death. And if you don't have to eat meat, well, a lot of people are surviving just fine and thriving with a vegan diet, So yeah, I'm really proud of Wilbur, and I'm proud of myself for letting him, at some point, sometimes you just have to say, oh my God, I don't know where we're going here. And a lot of times, the life is a journey of surprises and mysteries. And if we dare just following the flow, the best things happen. So embracing each animal in your house, and really trying to find what word describes my animal. And that truly will help you find the reason for each animal to live. What does he live for, and what does he need to stay alive? Because the opposite of being a therapy animal is if your pet is really not a therapy animal, but you want him to be, and you take him to all these places, it could be really detrimental for your pet, who might just be feeling really overwhelmed. And I've seen some dogs who just got sick all the time because they were being taken to social places, and it was just not their place. It's not their personality, and they belong at home one-on-one, helping their owner get through a divorce or any other, a tough disease. I see a lot of animals dying. The timing of death is really amazing to me, because when the life mission is completed, the animal will die. So, for example, the owner now has a firstborn child. Often the animal will die when that happens, because the life purpose, the parents practiced or got their dogs first, and then grew into, okay, we can take care of animals, and now we're having children, and okay, it's a different life chapter. So I see life as a book, really, and we have to be aware of those chapters, so we can understand better when there is a time of the end of a life chapter, and it just makes sense that an animal would leave us. Science has proven that we are more prone to dying on our birthday, and I see that with animals also. And it makes sense to me because the cycle of life is completed. You know, you're born on the same day that you die. It just makes a lot of sense.
Wow, I don't think I knew that. I mean, I've known and have heard of a lot of people that have died on their birthday. I always thought that was an interesting coincidence, but I didn't know that there was some science behind that.
Yeah, there is more than what our brain can comprehend, you know? So I encourage everybody to tap into everything else, the rest of the puzzle, because it gives us so many answers, and it helps us live better, and it helps us die better. You know, pets grieve to a level that I did not realize until I started doing the in-home euthanasia service, where you can allow the rest of the animals to be present. And a lot of them will want to stay really close to their dying friend, and they will want to visit the burial ground, you know, the grave of their friend. And cows and large animals too will visit the grave for a few weeks even. And it depends on the bond, obviously. And when the owner dies, like one wish that I have for the medical system is that when the person dies, often that happens at the hospital, but we need to involve our animals somehow because they need to know what's happening. And they need to know that their owner is not coming home. And if we can just have them visit with the deceased body, just that is huge. You know, giving the animals some time to cope with what's happening here, because their life is going to be changed forever.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me of that, because that was a pretty touching story that you had in the book. Would you like to share just a little bit more about like the importance of other animals possibly being present for that, and what the animals go through if they are not present and the other animal in the house is gone or euthanized or taken away and they don't have that access to the grieving process?
So there is one of my favorite stories is Tater Tots, the bunny, who really is part of the pack in his household. And I visited twice, unfortunately, to help with 2 old dogs. And both times I was there to euthanize the old friend. Tater Tot, the bunny, would sit right next to the one that was sick. And he was not afraid of me. And he needed to be part of that ceremony, you know, that celebration of life and that transition into the next world. And so we need to respect those things, you know, those relationships. And so if we have to do the euthanasia at the hospital, I do encourage families to bring the other animals that we know will be extremely hurt or, you know, affected by the loss of their friend. And on the other hand, you know, I've seen a lot of funny situations when the bully dies or when there's jealousy amongst animals. And so there is less grieving and more of a celebratory, like, oh my God, thank you. You know, now I have all the space to myself. I have the humans to myself. I don't have to share with anybody. So it can go either way. So it's, again, there is no recipe. It's giving our pets the opportunity to be present, to not be present, to do their grieving process like they need to do. Just like this is how I approach it with people of all ages, you know, children, some of them will want to be there, some of them won't. And again, adults is the same thing, you know, trying to really empower everybody to listen to what they need and just honor what they need, because it's not easy and it can happen in many different ways. So it's just communication, you know, and being sensitive and respectful to everyone's needs.
Great. And if people are listening to this and maybe they recently had a pet that had passed and their other animal wasn't involved in it, is there anything that you would recommend to the owner in how they can, you know, maybe even telepathically speak to the other pet, or, you know, if the ashes are brought home, to allow that other pet to be around that? Or is there anything else that you would suggest to help other pet owners help their other pets in the grieving process?
Yes, absolutely. And like you said, if you have the urn or the ashes of your previous, your deceased pet, definitely put the urn on the floor where your other animals can come and smell and sniff and spend time with them. I've seen that to be very beneficial. And also the toys and the bed and anything else that belong to your other pet, there's no rush in taking them away. I see a lot of comfort for the pets who are left behind to sleep in their friend's bed or be close to, not change the routine right away, giving them time to adapt. So you can bring some old toys back if it's already been a while. And obviously, yes, talking to your animal, not that they understand all the words that you're going to use, but they will sense that energy and explaining them what happened. Some animals are definitely more in tune than others. And so I've seen how animals will play with the wind. Let's say, people say, oh, I think, this one is visiting because the other pet has been just barking at nobody or, again, playing by himself and seem like there is a spirit visiting. So I like those stories, too, because I believe that, there is a very thin veil between this world and the next. And some of our animals will definitely stick around and keep an eye on us. I try and I want them to feel like they have permission to move on because they might reincarnate. And so I encourage people to not force them into staying here, giving them permission to follow their journey. And that starts before they are even passed. And giving them permission to die can really allow for a natural and quick death. And I've seen that a lot. So it's really powerful when you just talk to your animal. And I know it's hard, but being able to say, I love you, but I don't want you to suffer. So please you have my permission. You can go. Don't hang in there for me, because a lot of our animals will sacrifice themselves for us. They love us. Our bonds are so tight. So giving them permission to die and then giving them permission to go fully, to go where they need to go and then possibly find us again. And yes, I've had many, many stories of families, even, they adopt this new dog and they try to give him a name, but the dog doesn't respond until they use the previous dog's name. And then the dog just comes running. They're like, wow, And then one more thing that I find really helpful for a natural passing is to give our animals space, alone time to die, because I find that it's much easier to die when you're alone. And people get upset, even when our loved ones, our human loved ones are dying and people are watching over them, spending, all day, all night with them. And then they just go to the bathroom for 2 minutes. And that's when their loved one dies. And they regret, like they wish they were there. And I always tell families, well, it makes sense. Dying is not easy when you have your loved ones near you, and it's harder to take care of yourself and to follow that path. You just want to be there for them, and they're sad. And so I see that with the animals too. So giving them some time by themselves, it can really empower them to just let go more easily.
Yeah, that might also empower people to hear too, because I think, there could be more loss, or if we're not able to physically be there at the time of transition, that, people do feel bad. And that just might be for our own, for what we needed. We needed that, but, the person or the animal who is passing may not have needed that. So, I think that that's important for people to hear too, that it would be okay, to give that animal some space and some time. And if the animal does pass when you give it space and time, then that was a great gift that you probably did give the animal, because you honored that and what they needed. Completely.
And especially if we're at home and there is some hiding space, or you can make them a nice bed in the closet, like somewhere remote, because that's a wild instinct to separate from the pack to die. Wild animals do that too. So when you realize that your animal is okay now, separating from everybody and looking for a comfortable place. So if you facilitate that by giving your pet a nice cozy place in the closet, comfortable, away from noises and everything, and you see that your pet really is comfortable there, then that definitely, yes, would be a really great, the best gift you can give your pet for sure.
Yeah. So how are you continuing to work with people now? Like if people are listening to this podcast and they would like to connect with you, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
So through my website, all my social media links are there, and my email and phone number. So I do consultation, over the phone and via pictures, and I also locally, I'm in Florida now, so I do in-home services, and I work at the hospital, and I try to get that balance for myself. But I'm always available for people anywhere in the world to just call me, and we can talk about what's going on, and I can help you the best I can, at least, and facilitate whatever difficult situation you're going through with your pet. And then we can work with your veterinarian. And, it's a team effort completely. So when you have a gut feeling about, I should reach out to this person, or, going to, again, do some acupuncture or animal communication, or follow that voice inside of you, because that's really the best tool that we have to navigate through life. And obviously trying to decide if surgery is the right option or not, and really bringing it back to what is our pet telling us, and how can we care for him or her by keeping her dignity, keeping the dignity of our animal and making fair decision. That's the goal, to prevent unnecessary suffering.
Right. And remind me again, what part of Florida are you in for our listeners who do live down there?
I'm in the Northeast, so St. Augustine area. Okay.
All right. And the best website for them to visit would be?
It's Hayley'sAngels.com. It's www.Hayley'sAngels.com.
Great. Well, Dr. Joanne, thank you so much. I love talking about animals. And I know that our audience, they are huge animal lovers, because whenever we have a podcast that has to do with animals, animal communication, healing in animals, the stats are like through the roof. So I know that this will be well listened to. And I am so excited that we got a chance to introduce you to our followers. So thank you so much again for being a guest on the Path 11 podcast.
Thank you, April. Thank you so much. And everybody have a wonderful day.
Thanks for listening to the Path 11 podcast today. I hope you all enjoyed this show. And if you haven't checked out our Patreon page, I'd like you to do so, because we are going to start putting some content over there that is only for our Patreon subscribers. You can get content for as little as donating $1 a month, and it could just be a one-time donation. We have other freebies over there that you can get depending upon how much you would like to donate. And again, it could be a one-time donation, or you can continue to keep your subscription on a monthly basis at that donation level. But I just put my MBT immersive experience, which was a 4-day intensive meditation training in Tennessee with physicist Tom Campbell. I was listening to binaural beats, going to altered states of consciousness, having out-of-body experiences and life-changing experiences that I was able to bring back for myself, for my clients, for my friends. That was just out of this world. So if you would like to listen to that, I'd like you to head on over to path11podcast.com. You're going to see an orange button that says Patreon. Become a Patreon today, and you can have access to that podcast. And I would like to remind you to head on over to path11productions.com and check out the membership that we have for the Afterlife Awareness Conference. We have over 25 hours of footage with amazing speakers like William Buhlman, Thomas John, Terry Daniel, Suzanne Geisman, Suzanne Northrup, Linda Fitch, Austin Wells, just a few people to name off that were amazing. These workshops are just so valuable. So I think that you would really enjoy it. It's also a great thing to think about, to maybe give the gift to somebody who is struggling with grief. If you are looking for resources, this is a great conference to send people to check out. And thanks again for listening today.